with 2 kids. It's pretty big. Oh, that's tough. I feel for her. She can get summer camp one day with her. I understand.
How much hour are you at? I'm going to go ahead and call to order the Thursday, April 13th, 2017 meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals. The board does not write the zoning ordinance, but does have the authority to grant relief from it where practical difficulty or unnecessary hardship would result. The board will vote on each agenda item following a public hearing. Use variance requests require a minimum of 6 affirmative votes in order to grant the requested variances. Non-use requests require a minimum of 5 affirmative votes in order to grant the variances. If you would like to request that the board table or adjourn your case due to the absence of a full board, and it looks like we are missing one person this evening, you must inform the chairperson immediately after the public hearing. Petitioners shall do their best to limit their presentations to 10 minutes. Each participant in a public hearing shall do their best to limit their comments to 3 minutes. That being said, our first order of business is the approval of the minutes for the March 9th, 2017 meeting. However, we're having issues with the link on the computer, so nobody was really able to review those. So I'm just going to hold those off till next month, at which point we'll review both sets of minutes for both March and April, which will move us along to item C1, which is old business case number 170309. Located at 303 East Kenilworth. I'm not going to read through all the variances since you're going to give us a summation anyways, if you would, Mr. Murphy.
Mr. Chair, I need to recuse myself from this item as my company has direct involvement. Thank you.
So that does take us down to 6 members, and there is a use variance involved, so that requires all...
7.
Sorry, 7. So that requires 6 affirmative votes for the use variance and 5 for all the remaining non-use variances, and I'll go through those right now. This request was postponed at last month's meeting, and the petitioner has provided you with some revised drawings. You'll see in your packet, petitioner did reduce the number of units in the proposal from 8 to 7, and I'll go through how that affects the variances that they were originally requesting and what the revised variance request, or if it eliminates the variance request. So the first one is the use variance that we talked about with 6 affirmative votes. There's no change to that. It's only 1 family residential. It does not allow for multiple family dwelling units. Whether they're proposing 8 or 7, it's still more than 1, so they still are requiring the use variance. Previously, they were required to have 16 off-street parking spaces. That's 2 parking spaces per dwelling unit, 8 units. They've now reduced that number to 7, which requires 14 parking spaces. The site plan that's provided, and I'll bring that up on the screen here, illustrates 3 parking spaces to the north of the building. However, the most adjacent parking space shouldn't actually be illustrated there due to the fact that if you refer to the floor plan, there is a lower level apartment unit that has a required egress window well. And that window well projects out to the north into what's depicted as that parking space. So we can't obviously count that since it will be eliminated. So they're left with 2 off-street parking spaces, and again, they're required to have 14. So that's a reduction, but it's still 12 of the required 14. The lot size, it only allows for a certain number of square footage based on the lot size and the number of units. They've reduced the number of units, and therefore it reduces the required minimum lot size, certainly still requires a variance. There's no change in the setback variances that are being requested, and it does eliminate the need for variances associated with the size of each of the dwelling units. So the ordinance does have a minimum size for a studio, a 1-bedroom, and a 2-bedroom. And the footprint of the building stays the same. But by decreasing the number of units, it made those remaining units larger than the minimums. So they're no longer seeking a waiver from the minimum size for each of those type of units, the 1-bedroom and the 2-bedroom. So those variance requests are eliminated. That's a brief summary. If you have any specific questions, we can delve in a little bit further.
Are there any questions for staff at this point? Not seeing any. Are the petitioners present?
It's Tom Violante, 2758 Amberley Lane, Troy, Michigan. I want to give...
Before we dive in, though, I mean, as you heard, we have a 7-member board, and obviously you need 6 affirmative votes for the use variance. So this is your opportunity. If you would like us to delay this until we have a full board, it's completely your decision, but I certainly want to present that to you.
I understand, thank you.
Okay.
We'll proceed. I want to just give a brief history of how this project started. I approached Jason, said I wanted to improve this property. We worked on some things, and as we're working on it, I said, well, maybe it makes more sense to just, start fresh and approach the city with it as opposed to approve it. I know ideally it's a single-family area. It should be a single-family home, but in reality, it's a 6-unit approved apartment building that I'm about to improve. So the decision is whether the roof needs to be done. So I'm going to do the roof or proceed to the project. And this will be for the next 20 years. And then what happens in 20 years, we'll see. But this will remain a 6-unit building right now. I thought it's really kind of a lousy investment, I'll tell you the truth, but I thought this was an improvement to the neighborhood. So that's my approach in coming here. But I think it's an improvement to the neighborhood, and I think it's going to be a better addition to the neighborhood. And that was my intention. But if you wanted to go over.
Sure. Jason Krieger with Krieger Architects. Joseph did a great job summarizing the changes that we made. We really did not expand the footprint. What we did do is we reduced the density, which eliminated a couple of the variances. And then we reduced the parking variance because of the number of units. So the proposal is to keep the shape and size of the building the same, keep the materials the same, but reduce the density, hoping that would help to make it more viable or acceptable to the zoning board.
Any questions for the petitioners at this point? If you are granted these variances this evening, can you speak to a time frame at all in terms of because obviously you have tenants that are going to be displaced and so forth when you're able to, Sir, we're not at public comment yet.
Sir, I can hear you well. I can't hear you.
Okay.
I'm sorry. All right, time frame. I would kick off Jason to do the architectural drawings. I would give notices to my tenants, let them know what's going on, and help them find another place because it's going to be gone, and proceed right away.
Okay, very good. No questions? Yes, sir.
Apologies, I wasn't here for last month's meeting, but just generally speaking, what's the obstruction or the objection to putting back a 6-unit dwelling versus 7? I know you've come down from 8, but
this is challenging construction, and for those units, this is going to be an investment of $100 of $600,000 or something like that, just to make it financially viable. That was the only reason. So we added the 1 unit in the basement to make the other units bigger. When I say basement, very low level, the lower level. But that was the reason behind that.
thank you.
Any other questions? All right, not seeing any, I'm going to ask you gentlemen to take a seat so I can go ahead and reopen the public hearing. But before I do that, Joe, I don't seem to have the timer function on my screen here. What am I looking for?
That time. That one right there.
Oh, there we go.
That one right there should work.
Not cool.
Yeah, I think you can. Capacity.
If I can reset it.
It's definitely not going to control that timer.
That's all right, as long as I can see it, we're
Yeah,
good.
exactly.
All right. If there is anybody here who would like to speak during this public hearing, please raise your hand, wait till you're recognized by the chair, proceed to the podium, give us your name and address for the record if you would, please, and please try to limit your comments to 3 minutes. I saw that gentleman in the back stand up almost immediately, so please come forward, sir.
Yes, good morning. Afternoon. Stephen Simpson, 332 East Kenilworth. My only concern with this is the paperwork that you got, the city of Royal Oak sent to my address, it said that it's already a non-compliant building, 6-unit, and it's supposed to be a single dwelling. Why not, if you have to do something to it, return it to its original state of single family, because it is a neighborhood. I mean, we got dogs walking, people playing, kids playing. I don't even like the 6-unit, and if it's already non-compliant, why build a bigger structure that's more non-compliant? That doesn't make sense to me. It's a single-family neighborhood with trees. We already lost a bunch of trees because of the parking lot that was built in front of it. I don't want to lose more trees in here, you know. So, that's my only thought. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And who's going to be next? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Michelle Robbins. This is my neighbor. I lived at 303 East Kenilworth. I lived at 1219 Parent upstairs. I lived across the street when there were buildings there. There's a lack of him taking care of the building through over 20 years I've been there, or almost 20 years. My bedroom ceiling was caving in. My front room ceiling was caving in. He said he wouldn't put no more money into it. My couch got wet. My carpet got wet. My dresser got ruined. The tarp made icicles. I had to break them to get out of my front door. And when I did, I fell down the stairs, cracked my hip. It's been about 4 weeks ago now, and I'm mending well, thank God. He took some pictures of the ceilings, the house inside. I want to know, why should he be a landlord again after 20 years that he made us live in hell? And when things got fixed, he'd have a bag boy or somebody that worked in the back fix or paint. Even had my own husband paint when I lived upstairs. When I got my security back, even though I fell and my insurance only pays 80%, he gave me $300. Not considering, after 20 years of living there, all the pain and sorrow I went through and had to move because Section 8 would not pay them anymore because they looked at it and they wouldn't okay it. Why should he be a landlord again? He didn't take care of this for 20 years. And if you want to see pictures, he can show you.
Yes. Hi, my name is Misbah Ahmed. I live at 309 East Kenilworth. I have several pictures of her apartment on the inside. I'm not sure if you can see it too well, but in this picture you can see that the roof is heavily damaged by water, and I'll show you. In this picture, you could actually see the panel falling off from the ceiling. This is, this is caused by water damage from the upstairs toilet leaking. The water from the toilet has gone down into her furniture and damaged it.
So I'm going to ask you to wrap up, but also, one thing that I want you and everybody else to keep in mind when we're listening to this particular case, right now we're determining whether or not we're going to allow him to build this new building or not. If, for whatever reason, we determine not to build it, we are not in a position to go after him and say, hey, listen, you need to do this, that, or the other thing. We are not an enforcement arm. So even though I appreciate what you're telling me, we're not in a position to really address the matters that you're bringing to our attention.
Okay,
You follow me?
understood. Yeah,
All right,
thank you.
Thank you, sir. And who's going to be next, please? Yes, sir.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, sir.
How about the audience? My name is Larry Frinke. That's F-R-I-N-C-K-E. And I live at 300 Rhode Island, on the corner of Rhode Island and Delaware, right across from the Frank Wentland Park. I bought the property in 1972 and have lived there off and on now for 16 years. I've seen many changes in the neighborhood over the last 45 years, and I believe that it is in the best shape it has been since 1972. It gets better almost every year. Enough history. I am before you to voice my concerns and objections over what I have heard about some, if not all, of the zoning variances that T&J Investments has requested from the City of Royal Oak for 303 Kenilworth. I have the case number if you're interested, but I think you know what it is. The first variance objection is waiving, and I may not have the numbers right because I see a few things have been adjusted to what I had been told, but I'm going to go ahead and use my numbers. You'll get the gist of it. The variance objection is waiving of 14 of the 16 parking spots required. At very least, this waiver will spill over to the available parking on the second block of Kenilworth, all the way to the railroad property. The residents on this stretch will have to fight to park in front of their houses. Some of the older houses on the stretch will have to use their driveways, which are from an earlier era and painful to drive into and back out of, using the wider cars that are sold today. Also, this deprives residents of parking they pay property taxes on to maintain the road that runs in front of their property, thereby subsidizing T&J Investments at 303 Kenilworth. Next, I object to the lot area, front yard setback, east and west setbacks. I imagine a blockhouse structure being built on this property, and I saw the picture, but I still believe it will be an eyesore. I fear this will ruin the look of the surrounding neighborhood and property values will plummet. I'm very interested to know the rest of the variances as well. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, sir. Sorry. Yes. Yes, I'll take the lady in the back who's got her hands full.
I'm gonna do it now just in case we have a meltdown. I'm Kelly Hickoff. I live at 306 East Kenilworth. This is Leonie Hickoff. I am opposed to the apartment structure going in. It's kitty corner to where we live, and there's really two big concerns that I have with it going there. Ever since we've moved in, the condition of the property itself is completely dilapidated. There's a tarp for a roof right now, so I just have a severe concern with the person who owns it saying that they're going to make it any better. And I would be really concerned with, how long the construction takes, the quality of the construction, what it would do to the street, the type of just the quality overall that it would really bring to the street that we live on. And then the second thing, my husband and I are investing in our home right now, a really significant amount of money, and that going in across the street from us, I would be very concerned that it would negatively impact the value of our home. Those would be my two main concerns. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And who's going to be next? Yes, sir.
Hi, we're Paul and Connie Wright. We live at 202 East Kenilworth. And we'd really like the zoning board to vote against the variances being asked for at this point. Waiving parking spaces and minimum required lot setbacks for this property is only going to create more congestion in our area. And this works against what both the city and the neighbors want for our neighborhood. We'd like to keep a neighborhood. Thanks.
Thank you. Sir on the aisle. Yes, sir.
Bradley Dorr, 416 East Kenilworth, my personal home. 403 East Kenilworth, a new construction home. Formerly 306 East Kenilworth, and a build interest in 312 East Kenilworth. Good evening, board members of the Royal Oak Zoning Board. Thank you for taking the time to listen to our thoughts on this matter. I want to say that I am thankful to live where I live, and I do love my neighborhood along with my neighbors. I do not intend to disrespect anyone with any of my statements. This is merely my opinion. I believe my neighbors are all in agreement with what I have to say. I want to preface my thoughts by saying that I may be a millennial and a young in age, but I'm not young in experience. I've spent the last 9 years of my life in the real estate business. I've bought, renovated, and sold over 40 homes, many of them in Royal Oak. I've committed my time and energy into beautifying this neighborhood for the past 3 years of living here. I've risked a lot of my own money building 2 homes on this street, and I'm currently in the process of building the 3rd and 4th, one being my personal home. I believe I have greatly improved the overall value of this neighborhood, and it is my opinion that this proposed project will not only be detrimental to the value of our homes, but also be an inconvenience to the already crowded parking on the street. In response to the statement in the previous meeting about millennials not owning cars and the parking not being an issue, I am in complete disagreement. I own 3 cars, and I don't know any pure millennials that do not own a car. Royal Oak is currently being beautified by new homes with architecture that is conforming to the neighborhoods. From what I have learned in the previous meeting, the existing structure is grandfathered. Once the structure is removed, it is to be considered new construction. At least that's how the city has treated my projects on the street. It is to my knowledge that the lot would not be eternally grandfathered for multifamily use. It would be returned to single-family use as shown in the Southwest Section 22 of the zoning ordinance. In response of it not being financially feasible to alter this structure or build a new single-family home, it has worked out for me. I've made a comfortable living doing what I do, especially on this street. Also, in response to the lot not being wide enough, I want to reference the property located at 501 East Farnham. That house was also built on a 30-foot wide lot. I know this because I sold a teardown to the builder, Tony McGuckin, and he has built many homes on narrow lots and has had much success. East Kenilworth is a very tight community, and it is our sincere interest in keeping the neighborhood the way it is, the way we like it. We believe, again, that this proposed structure would not only be detrimental to the value, but the aesthetic and the convenience of this neighborhood. Again, I appreciate you taking the time to listen to us. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Who's next? I don't see any hands up. Yes, sir, gentleman in the blue coat.
Good evening. Chris Gorey and Kelly Drummond, 313 East Kenilworth. I just wanted to stress my concern as far as the parking goes, along with hopefully it will not be an eyesore. We'd moved a few months ago. We love it. Love all the little houses and it being nice and very, like Brad said, tight-knit community, and we'd like to keep it that way. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. And I thought I saw another. I'm going to go over here on the left. Yes, ma'am, you?
Good evening. My name is Dana Nerman. I live at 206 California Avenue. I'm opposed to the parking. Your decision greatly impacts me because I do not have a driveway. Along with a few other homes in the neighborhood, my lot is too narrow to accommodate a driveway. So allowing additional parking on these streets will impact me and where I am able to park. I moved to this neighborhood. I purchased my home because of Royal Oak parking issues. I previously lived in a 12-unit building with residential parking, similar to what Mr. Violante is proposing. Even with parking passes, I still had to walk a quarter mile or risk getting a ticket or towed from parking in a local church. He is asking for 12 additional spaces, I believe now. What about all the guest parking from their visitors? Where are they going to be parking? Where do these cars go during snow emergencies if they don't have allocated parking? I park in my neighbor's driveway. But what are the tenants going to do for this construction? Kenilworth is a very congested street already with Holiday Market, and it is also a dead-end street with no through traffic. So all that additional parking and their guest parking, the residents will have nowhere to park. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Can I ask for a clarification from Mr. Valiante?
We'll get to him once we get through all the public comment. We'll be pulling him back up to answer questions. I'm sorry, whose hand did I see? On the aisle here, yes.
Hi, my name's Jacqueline House. I live at 302 East Kenilworth. That's directly across from the property in question. Now, when I moved to this house a little over a year and a half ago, or a little bit less than that, I moved from 11 Mile in Huntington Woods. I wanted to live in a nice residential neighborhood close to downtown. Now, if this becomes an apartment building, then it completely goes against why I decided to move here. I'm a nurse practitioner downtown at the Detroit Medical Center. I handle emergencies every day at work. I need to sleep at night. So making this property bigger, having more tenants, more guests, that's gonna keep me up at night and can potentially affect people's lives every day. My boyfriend also lives there, an interventional radiologist. He's on spine this month, and it turns out every day he's either in somebody's spine or biopsying. We need a nice, quiet environment, and it's been nice so far. But I fear with all these people, it's just gonna force us to have to move. It goes against residential neighborhood. It's not kept up now. I mean, if you have $600,000 to build a new facility, why have I been looking at an ugly tarp for several months now? It's not kept up. They can't keep up their word. And that street right there is full of potholes. So if you have more people there and if he's not gonna pave it, and I've heard it's already been in ordinances in the past where he was supposed to pave it, you're gonna have a lot of other injured people. So please keep it residential and vote against this. Thank you.
Thank you. And who's next? There's any other hands? I see a hand over here on the right, yes.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Brockwell. I live at 121 California Avenue. My husband and I are brand new residents to the neighborhood, and we're very happy to be here in Royal Oak. We're brand new to Michigan. I'm opposed to granting all these variances. I'm concerned especially about parking in our neighborhood. As everyone else has said, it's already an issue right now. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And who's going to be next? I see another hand here on the aisle, about more than halfway back. Yes.
Hello, my name is Wendy Thompson. I live at 323 East Kenilworth. Been there for about 30 years. Been there for all the issues that have gone on. We're definitely opposed. We do not want these variances agreed upon. Like people said, there's lots of congestion already in our neighborhood. I'm sure if you've taken the time to drive by the facility, people have already mentioned the condition of it. We don't need to reharp that. But there has been variances granted in the past. Like, for instance, when he put the parking lot behind Holiday Market, we had permit parking in the first part of Kenilworth. Our signs never went back up. The neighborhood worked to get permit parking, so we would have parking for residents. Permit parking signs disappeared. He didn't want them. He was granted variances for his parking structure on Parent. The road was supposed to be paved on Delaware between Parent and Harrison. It hasn't been done yet. So variances shouldn't be granted. You'll be opening the door for many other companies to get all these variances. You give them away once, people are watching what's going on. They'll be coming back. You need to protect us as taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you. And who's going to be next? Do I see any more hands out there? Going, yes.
Hi, I'm Mallory Collins. I live at 407 East Kenilworth. We've lived there a little less than a year, and I just wanted to make note that if you are to enter Holiday Market, you can tell that they pride themselves on being aesthetically appeasing to the eye, marketing-wise, how everything is stocked and stored. And I actually think that it's quite blatantly disrespectful that the person that owns that property does not value the residential property as well. And I just don't feel that that type of blatant disrespect to the community should warrant any type of variance. And that's just what I'd like to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Going once, going just under the gun. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Michelle Stamler. I live at 402 East Kenilworth. I've been there since '84. And I didn't really prepare anything, but the thing that keeps going through my mind, I know a lot of people are talking about parking and congestion, and I'm further east, but I do think it will affect all of us. But I guess the thing I keep wondering about is if it's zoned residential and this was grandfathered in, it seems to me like the perfect opportunity to reinstate the neighborhood feel that we have in every other aspect of the Wendland Park area other than that one property. It has truly been just an eyesore for a very long time, and I think, well, this is great. Let's, move and restore it. I mean, if it was zoned residential initially, why not take it back to its original roots? Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, sir. Be careful, please.
I blew my knee out the other day, so it's quite painful. Had not be for the gravity of the situation, I would certainly not be here right now. However, my name is John McIntosh. I live at 327 East Kenilworth. Been in the neighborhood with my wife and children for going on at least 20 years. I know most of my neighbors, and it's a good little neighborhood. Public speaking is very difficult for a lot of people, all right? And you hear the wavering, the people in their voices when they speak to you. And a lot of these people that are sitting behind you right now are not getting up to say anything. But I'd like to have a show of hands by everybody here who is affected by this whole procedure by raising your hands. Okay? This is my neighborhood. These are my people. All right, the use variance, first and foremost, is absolutely 100% unacceptable. All right? It's too much of a building on too small of a lot. All right? You have to the, what is that? The east, the next three houses down from that are little one-story, tiny little bungalows, all right? He's planning on putting in a two-story exceeding brick building next to these tiny little houses, all right? The development does not blend artistically to the rest of the neighborhood. Again, it's a huge brick square building nestled in at the front corner of our neighborhood, which are all just little tiny little houses and stuff. The south variance, obviously, everything changes on this work because everything is pretty much changed. Apparently, he's keeping the same footprint of the existing building as of right now. We were not made aware of any of these changes or had any contact with Violante during his changes and stuff as a neighborhood. He did at one point, as early as Wednesday, reach out to one of our neighbors and expressed an interest to getting together with us to discuss the property. However, it's the day before we come here, and we've already had all the Windward Neighborhood Association has already had all their meetings on the subject. So anyhow, the self-variance will more than likely lose the tree on the front of the property. Now, WROK is considered a city of trees, and for the most part, most of the mature trees on this site will end up going to the Woodsman Axe. Now, with a new building being put in there, the east property line will have to be made into a brick wall because it's commercial building next to a single-family building, all right? That's not taken into consideration yet. By doing so, we'll remove the 5 or 6 mature trees on that property line, not to mention the fact that the stockade fence that is already there is owned by the next person over, and their compensation when the destruction of their fence needs to be taken into consideration. Again, everything's been changed, so this changes a lot. What I'm winging this now. The east variance, again, loose trees, a few feet, no. Brick wall, I said that, service back the building. West variance, okay. What, building next to sidewalk? Okay, the west variance, again, you know, it's with a matter of a few feet right next to the public sidewalk that his doors of his building are going to be opening up to, onto the public sidewalk, okay? In the past, when he built the first parking lot behind the market in the expansion process, it was agreed upon by the variance.
So I need to try and wrap up. I've already given you an extra minute. If you could try and wrap up, please.
Okay. The variance, I'm stumbling because everything's changed, so I can't read from what I had because it's all a moot point. So I'm ad-libbing here to modify, to fix what I'm trying to do here. But a road was supposed to be built, and it was agreed upon by the Planning Commission and the Zoning Board, and it's never been built, okay?
We're going to ask them about that.
Okay, north variance, parking spaces, all right? You've now opened up 3 parking spaces now. However, you said 1 parking space is going to be gone because of something there, okay? Now it leaves only 2 parking spaces. The other one of those 2 parking spaces is also going to be gone because you're going to have to build a brick enclosure for the dumpster that services that piece of property. Currently, the dumpster sits out on the main road, out on a public street, which is also a code violation, as one of the many that are stacked up on this property currently, according to the city things. What happens when people have guests over? Then the parking becomes crazy, okay? Mr. Violante, past practice has not been a very good neighbor to us all. He has multiple violations currently outstanding on this site. He should be held to the same standard that other developers in the city. As a well-known business owner in the city, he should be held accountable, all right?
Sorry, I really need you to wrap up. You're well over 2 minutes past
last
now.
page. He has never paved the street, which was agreed upon. First parking lot, okay, hit that. He has not sat down with the neighborhood, hit that. Stay in neighborhood. Kenilworth Avenue is now potholed and patched. And it's rumored now that the property to the north, which is a car part building, has been purchased by Violante also. If he gets away with murder on this one site, what's to say he's not going to pull the same shenanigans on the next site? And the last and most least thing is that this development is a Section 8 home. Okay, so he's basically going to get if this thing flies, he's going to get subsidized housing paid by taxpayers for that place. So he enriches himself.
That point is not relevant to what we're discussing.
Well, it is the use variance. It's a use variance, and it's a Section 8, so it is applicable, so on and so forth. But thank you for y'all's time. This is a very big issue to us.
Thank you, sir. Is there anybody else? Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I'm Nick Weber. I live at 325 California. We've lived there for 40 plus years. I wasn't going to say anything, but for 40 years we've watched Holiday Market, and I was amazed when they put that addition on and the parking lot. They actually started taking care of the place. It used to look like a dump. And going by the property that we're all talking about, that looks like a dump. And I did, based on his past performance, I don't think anything's going to change, whether it's a new building or not. And I think it's a big mistake to let him get away with whatever he wants. The whole neighborhood's against it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? All right, going once, going twice. I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing and ask Mr. Violante and Mr. Krieger to step back up to the microphone if they would. I believe, Mr. Kroll, you had a question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair.
So parking has kind of been the theme of the night here, it seems. How many cars currently exist there?
I'd be guessing there's 6 units now. So.
Are they single units, double units? I mean.
They're single bedroom units.
I'm trying to understand what the impact of all these more cars everybody's talking about.
Right.
Seems like you already have 6 going to 7, so I'm just trying to figure out how many more cars we're talking.
There's 6 units now, and there's 7 units right that I'm proposing.
I don't believe there's any parking on site currently.
And there's no parking right now, so it'd be very similar.
Okay. So you're not seeing a huge addition of parking, of cars, spaces needed. It's been more shown because you're going for a variance, and therefore the parking laws are part of that variance, but in fact, those cars are at your place now.
Correct.
Thank you.
Sir, or folks, please, we're going back and forth with the petitioners right now.
He shouldn't be a liar.
No, he doesn't want, you don't pay attention. You don't.
Please, we were very polite to all the public speakers, and we did not interrupt you. Please don't interrupt us. Does anybody else have any other questions for Mr. Violante at this point? The speakers had mentioned a handful of points. The first one being they've alluded to this issue of you having to pave the road, or what the backstory was on that. I remember some vague talk about that, but I don't remember. Can you help refresh my memory?
All I can do is agree that we would pay to pave the road. It's the city, I can't pave the road.
Right.
So it's the city to pave the road and then to bill me. So I suggest everybody contact the city planner.
And a question for you, Mr. Murphy. Another speaker had mentioned that because of this use, that a brick wall would be necessary to the east of the property, separating it from the home next door. Is that in fact the case?
No, it's not listed as a variance request. So there'd be appropriate screening that can be put in place with landscaping.
Okay. And I think the only other question I have is, obviously there's very vocal opposition to this particular plan. If, let's just say for argument's sake, that we do in fact deny these variances, is there anything that the city can do to compel him to tear this down and only make it a single-family home?
That would have to go in front of the building. There's a particular board associated with that. First has to be designated by the building official as a hazardous building and given notice and court orders, and then it has to go in front of a board. And a very long process, but it's certainly something that code enforcement is aware of.
But at the same time, he would also be given an opportunity to make the necessary improvements too.
Presumably you've received a letter indicating as such already.
I'm waiting for a decision. I'm going to start improving or plan for the development. So it's one of the two.
Right. So, which leads me back to my next question for you. So if for argument's sake this gets denied, then you're going to make the improvements necessary that have been deemed by the city and so forth. And one way or another, we're either going to have a 6-unit place here or a 7-unit place here.
Right. And I would consider the 6-unit of the new place as well. But yes, and that's why I pushed when you said, we don't have a full board. I said, I got to start doing something. So let's go.
Right. Nobody has any questions for the petitioner at this point? All right, I guess have a seat if you would, gentlemen, and we can bring it back to this side of the table for additional discussion if anybody has anything that they'd like to offer. We're already done with public comment, ma'am.
All right, I'll go.
Yes, ma'am.
Looking at the requirements for use variances, there's 5 requirements. I think 4 of them have been failed to be met. First one, the property could not be reasonably used for the purpose permitted in that zone. The permitted purpose is a single-family residence. If he can build a 6-unit structure, he can build a single-family residence. Second requirement is that the appeal results from unique circumstances peculiar to the property and not in the general neighborhood conditions. And I don't see what unique circumstances there are. It's a small lot, but there are very small houses in that area, neighborhood. C, the use requested would not alter the essential character of the area. It is currently a non-conforming, legal non-conforming use, but it is a house, and it looks like the other houses, other than the fact that it's larger. This structure will, I think, significantly change the character of the neighborhood, and therefore I don't think C is met. And then finally, E, the use will preserve a substantial property right possessed by other property owners in the same zone. These people bought their houses thinking they were buying in a residential neighborhood. This house, you know, when they bought their house, they may or may not have known that it's being used as a multifamily house, but it looks more like a multifamily house, and it will be improved if we refuse to grant the use variance. So as to the use variance, I don't think they've met their burden, and I would vote against it.
Any other comments? Folks, please. Mr. Kroll?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think if, I'm really going back and forth on this, and I think, Deb, I think a lot of the points you made are solid. If this could be turned back into a one-family house, I think everybody in the audience would be happy. I tend to be a bit of a realist, and when you have 6 incomes coming in from a rental, you're not turning it back into a one-family. So I see kind of what's proposed or what's there, fixed up, but what's there. And I think those are really the choices in front of us. I commend the neighborhood for coming together, although I think it puts us in a little bit of a tough situation, because we're here really to judge the property on the merits of the property and the request in front of us, as opposed to having the entire neighborhood show up. And it is a little bit of mob rule, although it certainly does affect us up here. So with that, I really don't know where I'm going to go with this.
Anybody else?
Well, I'd like to disagree about the mob rule mentality. I always try and look at each individual case based upon the merits. And I'll agree with Ms. Zugan on most of her points, although I do think B leans a little bit more into grandfatherness, but still 3 out of 5 that don't meet the use variance, if we were to let it build new, is really tough for me to swallow, even though I do agree. I think actually the apartment looks nice, and it'll, for the most part, bring up a better appearance than that house is there. It would be inconsistent with the neighborhood and what the neighborhood appears to be. So I would be in agreement that I don't think I would be voting for the use variance. Wait.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I think Deborah hit all the points right on the head that I would have emphasized as well. I think it's a gorgeous looking building that would actually be in line with the neighborhood appearance. It looks like something that was designed and constructed back in a time when similar multi-family dwellings were in neighborhoods. However, in this case, it is a single family dwelling lot. And I think it's exceptionally noted that to try and not only tear down what's there and put back another 6-unit spot or building and have this discussion about, you know, what's there is being replaced, but to increase that capacity even further contradicts, I think, what our obligation is in looking at the variance requests. So, I mean, just based on the use variance alone, I will also be voting against this.
Well, there's no motion yet to vote against if somebody wants to offer one. Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to deny the use variance A, as well as all the other variances.
We have a motion by Mr. Ofac.
A question, a point of procedure. If we denied all the other variances and they wanted to come in and put a single-family house in there, they would need those variances. Our denial now would not affect a subsequent request?
be it different?
They're proposing a multifamily structure, so the variances are tied specific to what they're proposing. If these variances are denied, or if they come back with a different proposal, single-family home, and it requires variances, there would be an entirely separate case associated with it.
I'll support the motion.
Okay, then we have support. Is there any additional discussion on this motion?
Well, I think it's been pretty much all covered, and I do want to commend the architect on a very handsome looking building. However, I do think that the building that is there can be renovated and refurbished, and regardless if it's still grandfathered into the same thing, it'll have a better single-family feel. So.
All right, then I'll weigh in at this point. And I think we know where this vote is going just by the nodding of the head or nodding of the heads and so forth. The one thing that's sort of striking me here is, and I hear the neighborhood loud and clear. Your voices were heard, and I understand your arguments. I'm struggling with the idea of the fact that the reality is that Mr. Violante is just simply going to fix up the building that currently exists to the point that would appease the city, and we're still going to have that building. And there's part of me that thinks that this other building would be more attractive. For those reasons, I'm not going to support the motion, but I fully understand where the rest of my board members are coming from. I believe that what is being offered at the end of the day would be an improvement to the neighborhood, and I think that that better-looking building would be financially advantageous for the neighborhood, but obviously that's one man's opinion.
Okay, I'll throw my opinion out too. We may as well have everybody say something. I can't buy into that, but allowing this to continue makes the new thing look better. We've got a zoning issue where this was grandfathered, but it's supposed to be a single-family neighborhood. No building lasts forever. I doubt that 100 years from now, and admittedly none of these people will live there then either, this building won't be there. And if we leave it this way, at that point, a single-family building will go on that lot, which is what we've said the zoning is supposed to be. I don't think we're supposed to look at, but it will make it look better this year. I'm not sure where that timing in zoning ever comes in. And I would have to agree with all of the requirements, and that I can't also see any way that really even any of those pass. But I have, again, just problems with, and this view has come up before with, but it'll look better now. That's not the issue. The issue is the zoning.
Very good. Yes, sir.
Sorry, I know I spoke on the use, but I want to echo your comments that allowing a property to be depressed and then promise to improve it if you're given variances, I think is a poor practice. That's all.
Not seeing any other comments, I will go ahead and call for the vote. All those in favor of the motion to deny signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
So that, I'm sorry?
5-2.
5-2, yes, sir. Myself and Mr. Kroll. So Mr. Violante and Mr. Krieger, obviously you heard that did fail, and we appreciate your time. And thank you, everybody who came out to speak tonight. Okay. No, we can move forward. I'm going to just wait 1 minute before we get to our next agenda item, so everybody who wants to leave can clear out of the room without disrupting the next petitioner.
That was 100 years. 130 years ago.
That's the only highest exactly, yeah. Again, I just went to her mother went to this girl. All you have to do, everybody sees good to see you. Yes, my dad's appreciate it. Unfortunately, being adopted. Genes. Yeah, my
So you could have said that, except for the one, and then 100 years from now, our hardware issue can pull around it. Whatever they use that, to kind of scroll or on your watch or something, watch the video. See, this guy really lives up for
And if it is, I'd like to make an appointment with our commission. I feel very badly. I have much rather.
Now that it looks like everybody who is leaving as a result of that agenda item is moved into the hallway, that moves us along to item D1. So new business, which is case number 170411, which is the public hearing on the appeal of Elizabeth and Lucius Sandzik, petitioners and owners for the following variance: waive 15 feet of the minimum required 39 feet east setback along Maple Grove to permit construction of a detached accessory dwelling, a garage, located at 1502 Catalpa Drive. Mr. Murphy.
He's leaving.
After that, I don't blame him.
Okay. This lot is located at the corner of Catalpa and Maple Grove. There's an existing detached garage that's accessed from Maple Grove, as you can see on the aerial photograph in front of you. Petitioner is proposing to demolish that and construct a new detached garage. And I'll illustrate that on the survey sketches. This is side-by-side comparison that illustrates location of the current garage, proposing to demolish it and locate the garage a little further to the north. The garage, the existing garage and the proposed garage are located within the front setback of the house to the north, which fronts along Maple Grove. Zoning ordinance requires that any structure, whether it's the house or the detached garage, be setback equal to or greater than the house to the north in this case. So this garage is going to, proposed garage would have a 24-foot setback from the property line, and the house to the north has a 39-foot front yard setback. So they're seeking a waiver from that front setback requirement in order to construct the new garage.
Any questions for Mr. Murphy at this point?
So, Mr. Murphy, just to be clear, if we apply this 39-foot side yard or front yard setback, this building envelope will be about 8 to 10 feet wide. Is that about it?
It limits it severely. That sounds about right.
Okay, thank you.
And it's basically just to line up with the house that's to the north of it.
Correct.
And the current garage is already encroaching on that 39 feet, correct?
Correct. And it has a 20-foot setback.
Any other questions? Are the petitioners present? Please come forward.
Hi.
Good evening.
I'm Luke Sandzik. We want to build a garage. We just moved back into Royal Oak. We've lived in Ferndale for the last 20 years. We both grew up in Royal Oak, are happy to be back. The house we bought is in a beautiful neighborhood. The garage, not so beautiful. It's got holes in the back. You can crawl under our deck. We want to demolish both and put up a nice garage further into our lot. After looking at city code, I realized we couldn't do it, and that's when we reached out to Joe, asked what we could do. He said we had to come in front of you guys, get a survey, and talk to our neighbors, which we've done. We've got one letter of support that we got back from our neighbor, our next door neighbor, talked with the other two neighbors that would be directly affected by this project, and they are in support of it. Well, they just didn't get the letters back to us. What we gain from this structure is a yard we can use, a driveway actually I can park my truck in. Right now I cannot pull my pickup truck in the driveway without parking it on top of the sidewalk, so it's very tough. We fight over the driveway, so.
Who wins?
I think we know the answer to that.
So that's what we're looking for. If you have any other questions for us.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you talk to the neighbor directly to your north on Maple Grove?
I did, yes. Tristan was his name, yes.
And what did he say?
He was busy at the time. He just had a baby, and he said he didn't mind. I asked him to sign a letter and just never followed up with him.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the petitioner? Not seeing any, I'm going to ask you folks to take a seat so I can go ahead and open up the public hearing. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to address the ZBA on this matter? Seeing anybody, I will go ahead and close it and bring it back to this side of the table. Mr. Kroll?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve case 170411.
There's a motion by Mr. Kroll,
I'll support.
support by Mr. Muller. Any discussion on your motion, sir?
In all the zoning board cases I've looked at over the years, this one probably makes more sense to approve than many I've seen. I think it's somebody decided to pop a garage right now. I see it affecting nobody negatively and helping them, and I think it does produce an asset to the neighborhood as well as them.
Anybody else?
We regularly run into this zoning problem that when you have a house on a corner, the side yard is also your front yard. Sometimes it doesn't affect much because the houses are only built on two sides of the block. When they're built on all four sides, occasionally we get this situation where that garage is, in theory, too far forward to the house next to it. It's not too much. In fact, it's a small amount that he's asking for. But on top of that, there's this wonderful row of arborvitaes completely shielding this yard from the neighbor. It isn't, that neighbor in the brick house isn't going to look out his window and see a garage sticking out several feet in front of his house. He's going to see the evergreens that are planted there. So I really just don't see a problem. This, again, is a reasonable request and a reasonable thing, I think, to grant.
Any other comments? All right, not seeing any, I will go ahead and, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, sir.
I'll agree with what's been stated, and I have no problem with it.
I might as well say something. I see that there's a hardship in that that section of the block is sliced up into 6 different plats, and the garage directly across works well there, is in a line with that front house, is because they get a little extra land, so to speak, so it was kind of pushed back, and I think that's one of the difficulties here, is that there's no way to configure it otherwise, so.
Anybody else? All right, I will go ahead and call for the vote then. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? You're all set. Thank you. We should have let you go first. I apologize. Then that moves us along to our next item of new business, item D2, which is case number 170412, public hearing on the appeal of Krieger Architects, Inc. petitioner, Royal Oak Ventures, to waive 5 of the maximum allowable 12 residential dwelling units to allow a vacate building to be converted to a mixed-use development with 17 residential dwelling units located at 1017 South Washington Avenue. Do you want to go to you first?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'll also have to recuse myself from this case as well. Thank you.
And now over to Mr. Murphy.
Site's located on South Washington Avenue at the corner of Harrison. The original site plan approval included the parking lot, which is across the street on the opposite side of Washington. You'll see it in the aerial photograph. That's actually not associated with this proposal, and I'll go through why. So the structure originally was built and never occupied. It currently contains 5 incomplete residential units on the upper floors, and a second floor was originally approved for office space, and it's always remained vacant. The ground floor has a small tenant space, and the majority of it is off-street parking. It originally required the parking lot, the surface parking lot on the opposite side of Washington. The petitioner is proposing to complete those 5 residential units that exist on the upper floors and convert the second floor to 12 residential units and occupy that ground floor tenant space with a commercial use. The existing, all of those uses require a certain amount of parking. The parking that's on the ground floor of the building itself is an excess to what's being proposed. So the lot across the street is not necessary, it's not required to fulfill the parking needs of this proposal. However, the proposal would result in 17 residential dwelling units, and this particular zoning district allows for a maximum of 12 residential dwelling units based on the zoning ordinance standards. So they're seeking a waiver of 5 from the maximum allowable 12 units in order to complete the second floor to additional residential. If you have any questions?
Any questions for staff at this point?
So-
Yeah, go ahead, I'm sorry.
So the first floor, which has parking, is there parking in that, is like a garage drive-in, right?
Correct, yeah, we can look at the floor plan, and when you, and I'll also illustrate I'll also show some photographs, but you can pull in under the building, and the parking is under the building itself. There's a small commercial tenant space that fronts along Washington Avenue. It's not very large, and the remainder of the ground floor is parking. Thank you.
Okay, and so then the parking necessary for any commercial interest is also included underneath that?
Yes,
Okay.
it's in total. It requires, I think, probably somewhere in the neighborhood, but
Because I don't know how big that little front commercial space is. It's hard to tell. It's just kind of flat.
it is approximately 1,600 square feet.
Okay.
So it requires a certain amount of parking, but its required amount of parking and the 2 spaces per residential unit all can be accommodated underneath the building, and there still be an excess of parking for the ordinance standards. The previous office use was quite large, and it required far more parking, so it was necessary to build a parking lot across the street. Now, the parking lot's been in use, but the building hasn't. That's the best way to describe it. The parking lot has been used, but the building has not.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Joseph, if you could just maybe explain the reason for mixed use 2 allowing 12 residential dwelling units. Is that a calculation of lot size, building size, anything, or is it just a flat out number?
There is a calculation associated with it, just like any site that's zoned multiple family, which would only allows other uses, but it only allows multiple family. This mixed use allows multiple family and a variety of other uses like retail, office, restaurant. This particular zoning district states that the number of units is dependent upon the lot size, same as multiple family, the same as the multiple family calculation. But that if the sites around it are zoned the same thing, it's allowed to have what's called a density bonus of twice that amount. So I did, and I brought my calculations, so I knew somebody would ask me, sharp minds. If this were just a multiple family site, and it did not allow for that density bonus, they would only be allowed to have 17 residential units. But because they're in a particular zoning district and the adjacent zoning districts are the same, it allows for them to have the opportunity to double that. So they're allowed to, excuse me, I should take that back. Based on their lot size, let me go back to that. They're proposing 12. And they're required to have a certain amount of square footage for that, 21,000 square feet. So they're allowed to have a density bonus of twice the allowable in that district, so they're allowed to have up to 12, I apologize. And the proposal that they have is 17, and that requires a greater amount of lot area, which they simply can't accommodate due to the current size of the property. In just focusing on this particular site, not the one across the street.
So if this was a multi-family zoned area, which it's not, but if it was,
yeah,
and due to that lot size, it would be allowed to have 6 dwellings.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Kroll?
I was just, I'm going to hold off till.
The only question I have for you, Mr. Murphy, is if I were to stand across the street and look at this building today, and let's say they are allowed to move forward with the changes that they want to make, and I stand across the street and look at that building at that point in time, what am I going to notice from the street?
Based on the drawings that they provided, some of the facades changed to allow for greater windows on the rear and sides of the building.
But that said, the building envelope itself?
Building does not structurally change. It's not enlarged. It's not increased in height.
Right. Any other questions? Is that being the case, are the petitioners present?
Good evening, Dennis Cowan with Cooley, and I'm batting leadoff. Along with me is one of the owners, Joe Cardana, and also Jason Krieger from Krieger Clad. So, unlike your first agenda item, we have a beautiful building and no one in it. And we need to come to you to help solve this dilemma. Like many of you, I have made annual trips to the store of my good friend Gail Chin. Mrs. Cowan and our daughters have benefited from Valentine's Day and Christmas and other gifts and birthdays. And for the last 11 years, and I remember when this was the bowling alley, I think I went to the last time they had an event there to close it down. And for 11 years, I've wondered, when are we going to get somebody there? And every time I go in, Gail Chin says, do you know anybody who wants to do anything over there? You may note, I hope you got Gail's letter, because when I got involved with Joe and Chris, I was very excited because to be part of solving a problem in addition to all the other things that you have to do and we do, solving this problem is really a challenge, but also I think a great solution here that we have. So we have this opportunity to finally get somebody very dedicated to come in with this project. So let me, I want to say that Jason's firm, I think, wrote an excellent letter to you dated February 27th covering the 4 criteria. I wrote a letter to augment on that for this reason. There's a very practical difficulty here. First of all, if you look at the reality of this building, it already, as you may know, it was built originally to be a recording studio with the 5 condo-type units above it. And when the recording artists came, they and their band or whoever was going to be able to stay in these units. Well, obviously the downturn came and that all got wiped out. And I think this has gone through 2 or 3 owners now of people trying to do something with it. So when you look at the uses you could do on a second floor, well, retail isn't going to work in a mixed use. Office is very difficult because it's on a second floor. There's nothing on the first floor except the parking. And really, because there's already 5 living units on top, and Joe will talk more about those, the most obvious synergy here would be additional multifamily. When you get into that then and drill down, the reality is that you would be able, if we could only do 12 units, then you do the math, as I pointed out in my letter, these are 2,300 square feet living units. That's way over what the average is in Royal Oak. What's proposed is to have 12 units to allow 1,000 to 50, I think there's one 1,600 square foot unit. I can tell you I do as much multifamily as anybody in this community, at least from a representation viewpoint, not spending the money and building it. The trend is downsizing unit space. It's not upsizing unit space to 2,300. Those would be literally impossible to sell at that level. It'd be very, very difficult. So we're coming to you to ask for relief. This, I believe, is a very, very pragmatic request. I pointed out in my letter that the zoning board has approved density variances in the past. I can also tell you that the City Planning Commission with conditional rezoning and the City Commission have approved density waiver requests. And I will tell you what the kind of guiding principle has been in all those decisions, affirmative decisions. It's been, do you have enough parking? And this project has enough parking. In fact, it has in excess of the requirement. So I'm going to kick it over to Joe, because I know you want to hear from the owner, and then Jason for the details. I'd be glad to give my view on why I think our ordinance is overly restrictive on multifamily, because I think it's an old ordinance that goes back to when there was a lot of green space. And today what we have almost in all multifamily, you don't have the kind of green space and courtyards and everything. It's basically build to the lot line and go up. And I think that's a good thing because it preserves property for other uses. So overall, and I do want to tell you one other thing about Joe Cardana and his partner Chris Cusa. They've already bought the building. The building, although it looks great from the outside, was very incomplete on the inside. As a result, they've already paid $55,000 for all the permits because final inspections were never done, and under the city rules, they had to pay again for all of the permits, plus whatever the fees will be for whatever is approved here today. So I mentioned that it's not a factor, but I think what's important that you faced earlier this evening is what is someone's commitment to the property. That's a big commitment to write that kind of check and have the faith that they'll be able to move forward in a reasonable basis. They're asking for something reasonable. We hope you will grant, in your reasonable judgment, the waiver for the density request. Joe?
Thank you. Joe Cardona, Pristine Properties. We're very excited about the project. Just to bring you up to speed, as Dennis shared with you, we've already paid our permit fees. Construction has been ongoing. Of the 5 units that are on the roof, we currently have 3 reservations. They are all for sale on the 5th floor. We have several other showings coming, and we're at the point right now where they're doing trim and cabinetry. We're promising deliveries to our purchasers in 90 to 120 days. So we hope to be occupying that building very soon. If we do get granted the variance and can have a total of the 17 units, we are aware that this is a 0 lot line community, and there are going to be a couple units that will be on the sides of the buildings to the north and south. Those units will not be sold. We will retain those as rental units, as well as the retail space on the 1st floor, so that in the future, if Mr. Chin or the architect next door decides to ever sell or expand their property, nobody's going to be harmed by the loss of any windows or anything we added on those facades. And we do have alternatives and arrangements to provide proper lighting and ventilation to those units in that instance. But I wanted to make you aware, we do know that it's 0 lot line and that the units along the north and the south could be hindered from visibility one day, but that's why we're retaining those. We do have a lot of interest in the 2nd floor. 10 of the units will be sold. We think we have 4 or 5 people who've expressed wanting to do something, but of course we need approvals. We're going to be adding a gym facility that'll service the entire building. Each person, as mentioned, will have 2 parking spaces dedicated. The 1st floor retail space is already leased to a State Farm insurance agent. They have 6 employees. They've requested 6 parking spaces. Their employees will be parking inside the lot, and there's thankfully right now no metered parking along Washington in front or across the street. So, you know, they're customers who come in infrequently.
Joe's making a note of that.
Yeah, sorry I said that. But we're excited to keep this project moving forward. We hope we can get your support this evening.
Thank you, sir.
Like, we're just taking turns. I think Jason Krieger with Krieger Architects, I think everybody addressed just about everything. What I would like to do briefly is walk you through the plans. Joe, is this the PowerPoint that we sent? So on the ground floor, as mentioned, I don't know if my pointer would work here. Let me see. Nope, not on TV screen. In the northwest quadrant, right next to the elevator, we're proposing an amenity to the building, which would be the gym. We lost a few parking spaces, but as mentioned, we're still overparked for the site. There's a stairwell and an elevator on both the northwest and the southwest corners. And the northwest goes directly up to the roof, correct, Joe?
Correct.
Yep.
And it will only service the
only service the roof. And then, as you can see, there's parking all around with commercial along Washington. Can we go to the 2nd floor, Joe? This right here shows you the proposed unit layouts. The pink represents circulation space. The blue and yellow represents the units. As mentioned, we are proposing to cut in balconies on the east side. We did do the calculations for what's allowed to be open per the building code. That was reviewed by the building department, and what we're proposing meets that. They made us check that before we came for the variance. So what that allows us to do is provide balconies and light to units on the east, and the west already has amazing balconies that we will be using. Go to the next slide, please. Those are just the existing 5 units up on the roof. We're not doing any work there besides the improvements that Joe's been doing on the inside. Next slide. These are really just existing elevations that we included just as a house cleaning thing, just to keep it in the packet. Next item, please. Oh, you don't have the renderings in that? Well, the renderings are in the handouts that I gave you. So what we showed you were some, here we go. Yep, next one down. Next, there you go. So these are renderings that our firm did for Joe, and I'm sure that you're using them as marketing, but this is what the look will be on the inside. So you'll see that they're nice, spacious units. We have the balconies to let light in, and it's an open loft type style. They're finished out, very nice, and we think that they'll command hopefully top dollar. These are just the renderings that you can see. That's it.
Any questions for the petitioner at this point? Yes, ma'am.
What's the square footage of the 5 units on top?
The 5 units are 2,400 square foot each. They're each 3 bedrooms with 3 full baths, and they also have a study.
Okay. I'm just asking because Mr. Collins said 2,300 square feet is too big.
Well, and I want to clarify.
Those were existing, though,
Yeah.
and built several years ago. We assumed this building, and the problem is that second floor being 20,000 square foot and as an office space. It was never designed to be residential. The symmetry of each unit within that floor would be different. Now, those units on the roof, in my opinion, are probably the nicest units in Royal Oak because they're unique. They're rooftop, they have yards, they have an outdoor patio. There's 5 of them, and that type of unit can demand a little more square footage, and we're getting action on them. But a loft-style unit, like we're proposing on the second floor, that only has a window on one side of the unit, becomes a long corridor, it would become difficult to allow light into that unit. You're limited by having windows on only one side. So if we made it 2,400 square feet, you'd end up with either just this massive wide open space that you couldn't furnish, or you'd have many, many rooms that would not have any kind of light. So what we did was we maximized it for the use of, that space there that works to end up with the beautiful renderings that Krieger Klatt has done for us.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, not seeing any, I'm going to ask you gentlemen to take a seat real quickly so I can go ahead and open up the public hearing. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to address us on this matter?
Thank you. My name is Constantine Pappas. I'm the architect next door and the owner of the property as well as the parking lot behind. So this building would impact us, I think, in a positive way. I really don't see any major problem with it relative to turning it from an office zoning, into a residential zoning. I think that could be positive. I do not support at all any openings along the southern side of the building, which is shown in this concept. In fact, if you can turn to probably the floor plan, I think there's 2 units that have quite a few window openings on that particular side. I would challenge the architect to go back to the drawing board and come up with a way to get the means of egress out of the building without cutting holes into that building. If our plans change, which we're looking at different opportunities, we may very well build a nice big concrete block wall 3 stories high there. And if that's the case, what are we doing? I was involved in a project in downtown Detroit, which exactly this thing happened. We bought a building many years ago. I was a property owner. We put in about $150,000 of windows that looked into this property next door. Before you know it, 20 years later, there's a 6-story parking deck. Wiped out all the people in our building. All the tenants left, no natural light into it. There was a big problem. So I think there's possibly a way, from what I can see relative to the plan, that maybe some modifications could take place along that area such that no windows are cut along the south side. And somehow it's reorganized such that these units allow themselves to get natural light on the east and the west side. I do have a question for Mr. Murphy. How many parking spots are planned? I hear this excess, but I don't hear numbers. What are the numbers? So we have a total then of how many total units would we have? 22? 17? 17? So when you take the retail and you take the 2 units per car, how many total cars do we need?
46. 46.
We need 46?
No.
The petitioner did provide a parking
Oh, yeah.
analysis in there.
Oh, there it is, okay.
Not certifying it's accurate, but
No, I still didn't hear the answer. My question is,
There are 46 that are proposed on the.
46 that are proposed and 42 are required? So we only have 4 access. So when everybody comes here and visits all the people, where are they going? They're going to go in my parking lot. And I have a problem right now with the people just immediately south of me who are the psychologists, who all their people come and park in my parking lot. So what happens is we have 2 entities in our office, the architectural office and the law firm, and at this particular point, we're packed as far as the parking, and I do not have the time in order to police everybody being out of that. I have issues right now with all the people that go to the psychologists. So I would look very strongly on trying to keep this other parking, which is across the street, as a requirement, because I can see right now we're going to have some problems. We are going to have some problems. So the concept, I'm in favor of the concept. I don't have a problem with that, but I think there are some issues here that I think need to be really, really worked out before you grant the variance for this. I just think that we need to put everybody's minds together and come up with a really great concept that allow the developer to do what he's doing and then allow us to survive too. Because we've made a major investment into this city. We bought that building, it was a piece of junk. We spent a lot of money updating the building. We have a Class A building. We've won design awards for the building. We want to make sure that this building, along with the new building that's going to be done or the renovation to it, is positive to the whole community. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Mr. Button.
I'm
Chuck Button. A blast from the past.
I reside at 2 places, 2319 Red Run Court and 1126 South Washington. I'm not sure which one gets more time, but I am really glad to see this project. I think it's great for the South End. We've been looking at this white elephant for, I'm not sure how long ago it's been, 7 years, empty.
Longer.
The only thing is there, it's unsupervised, homeless residences on the first floor. And I believe that there were originally 55 parking spaces under the roof, or is that correct or not?
I don't know. I'd have to look at the.
Yeah, I think it was 55 originally when they set it up. And the lot across the street was there because of the bowling alley, because they had a bar. And so they were required to have X number of spaces. So he long ago bought that lot for just parking, and then eventually it's been improved. But like I said, I'm really glad to see, I'm not looking across the street hopefully anymore at just an empty building. It's been kind of, I think, a drag on the neighborhood, and this is an opportunity to enhance the neighborhood. Plus, instead of having people coming at 9 in the morning and leaving at 5 at night, you now have people living there with this situation and the setup, living there, going downtown, easy access to downtown by foot traffic or whatever. So I think it's a great thing for that area. Thank you.
Thanks, Chuck. Anybody else? Not seeing anybody, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to this side of the table. Before I go to you, Mr. Kroll, do any of you want to address any of the issues of the first speaker?
I just want to address the parking issue. First of all, the Royal Oak zoning code is a professional code that is designed and put together under professional standards for parking. And what that means is that taken into account in the parking calculation is not only residents but visitors, okay? And then also let's think of this very practical aspect. There'll be 17 units here. Most of those people are probably going to be working. They're going to be gone during the day, and probably some of them at night. But no matter how you do the math, that frees up all kind of spaces for anybody coming to the retail, to the agency during the day. So I don't think there's going to be the kind of parking impact that's been suggested because of the dynamics of the building and people coming and going. And even if somebody's there all the time, and they never leave their home, there is still going to be excess spaces, and there is still on-street parking and other parking in the vicinity available. So I think from a parking perspective, it's going to work out very well. In fact, it should have no impact on any of the neighboring businesses.
Do you plan on putting any sort of gate on that parking so that, somebody just doesn't pull in there and go down to the restaurant and hang out all night when they're not a resident?
When we acquired the building, it does have a gated parking, so it will be card access. There'll be a video intercom, so anybody coming in or out of our lot would have to be buzzed in by the resident or by the tenant in the retail space. I'd also like to remind the board that have we leave the building as is with the 20,000 square feet of retail, which could be a bar, a banquet facility, an office space that might employ hundreds of people and attract more vendors. I mean, theoretically, we could be this is probably the least obtrusive parking use on this site that we could use, even taking into account losing the other lot across the street. I think that, even counting that other lot, if we had a 20,000 square foot facility, one, it hinders my ability to sell the units for a premium on the top. It's very difficult to put in some kind of a use that's not conducive to residential living. We have these units listed for $675. Many of the people that have reservations with us are paying between $550 and $650. They don't want a bar. They don't want, other kinds of businesses with different people coming in and out and maybe touching their cars or going into the lot. Having all residential and a small office like a State Farm that's a very friendly kind of insurance use, it keeps the use common in the building. It keeps the common people coming there and allows us to secure the parking lot opposed to just leaving it open for anyone to come and go. And lastly, just to address Mr. Pappas, he does have a beautiful building. As he mentioned, he spent a ton of money, and we're happy to have him as a neighbor. We did take an account, that's why I addressed you, that one day he may sell and he may build. We do have an accommodation for the one unit to have windows out to the west, and our windows are designed so that if he were to ever build and go up, that we would put some kind of lighting or different things behind them so they would become a decorative effect window, even if he did a block wall. But that's why we address that. Those units are smaller. We're retaining those as rentals so that in the future, nobody comes to us and said, you sold me a unit, now someone built next to us, you wronged me. Because no matter how often you write it, you disclose it, you tell people, when they get upset, they forget everything that they did when they bought the property. And, we also think that, as he just spent a good amount of money on his building it, we don't think that any time in the near future it would be knocked down and replaced. But if it does, that's our risk, and we're happy to take that on. So,
thank you, sir.
I just wanted to address the window comment, really, just to clarify it. First off, the windows are not operable. They're not there for egress. It's a firewall. So literally they're fixed. They have the same fire rating as a wall itself. That's how we can do that on a property line. The egress takes place through the corridors. So as Joe mentioned, we're aware of the risk, and I don't think that that's an item that the zoning board could really weigh in on. Anyways, it's a building code issue. What we're here for is the density alone. The windows are things that we'll handle with the building department. It is our right to put them in. They're safe. And again, it's not something here that the zoning board can consider.
Is anybody? Yes, sir.
I guess respectfully, but we are being asked to consider the quantity of dwellings that are greater than what's allowed. And could you explain again, just my own knowledge, if you were to barricade those windows, your understanding the code would allow a single point of egress from a one-bedroom unit through the main corridor?
Yeah, so the corridor has two means of egress. You have a common path. At some point, you have to have two ways out. So we did those calculations, and we would be allowed to do that. As Joe mentioned, it's his risk as the owner. If Chin Jewelry or Mr. Pappas sells or decides to do something else, there will be a wall there one day, likely. So that's something that Joe has to decide whether or not he wants to take that risk or not.
Any other questions? Well, I think we're set with you, gentlemen. If you want to take a seat, we'll bring it back to this side of the table for additional discussion. Mr. Kroll.
I would like to make a motion to approve, what are we at, 170412,
We have a motion by Mr. Kroll.
I'll second.
We have a second by Mr. Ofac. Would you like to make any comments on your motion, sir?
Yeah, I think it was 2005. I think Bob and Leslie and I were probably all here at that time when this first came upon us. We looked at it again in July. It's been a total source of frustration to me to drive by that building and see it empty. And the thought that we approved it in 2005 was probably built in 2006, and no one's ever stepped foot in it. I look at it, you know, it's a nice looking place. I mean, I can imagine living up in one of those penthouses, and I can't really imagine. I think anything that could have been done has been talked about being done, and really sometimes there ought to be two different vehicles for us. One, approve it, the other, blown up. And I kind of see us there now. I don't know what could be a better use of this space. We don't have a parking problem. Might be a little window problem here or there, but after 12 years of watching this, I look forward to seeing somebody move in it.
I can see the hardships in this case. Part of the zoning ordinance, I think, was intended not necessarily for this exact situation. I think this is a unique situation. Granted, yes, maybe they can go down a unit or two to make it less of a request and still make do, but in essence, I think they've done the best that they could do with the situation that they have. And it's not going to change the appearance whatsoever. The building's already built. This is just trying to make something that's been already a problem, a solution. So I don't see any problem with granting variance.
Any other comments?
Yeah, the density issue oftentimes really is affecting the neighborhood. This is like the self-contained castle. It's very separate from the houses behind it. There are a few. All of your going in and out of this building is going to be through Washington, through the front. It just hits me as, if I've ever seen a place where there seems to be a problem, it's so self-contained, this might be it. The units are fairly large. If you didn't count my basement, some of these units are bigger than my house. You know, this is not tiny little apartments either. So it's like, okay, they added some more, but it's still big apartments. And, you know, he's probably right. Not many people want 25 or 30,000 square foot condos type things, you know. But again, since it's so self-contained, I just don't see the density issue being a problem that we might find in somebody building a small apartment building adjacent to a bunch of single-family homes.
Anybody else? Leslie, yes, ma'am.
I agree with everything that everyone has said, and I also appreciate, like you said, the castle effect, but all the parking is there, and it's included. That's really unusual for a lot of some of these things that we get. So, and Mr. Collins' comment on the people wanting smaller living spaces, I don't necessarily agree with that, but I think this has a very good mix regardless. You have the ones with the larger square feet upstairs, and my house originally was 1,530 square feet, so obviously this is as big as a regular Royal Colonial, so that's all.
I'll just add that all the units are bigger than my house, so.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks. Commenting, the same comment would have been asked as the first petitioner as to why this property couldn't be developed to meet the code, the ordinances for the number of units. I was interested in the city's determination how it's made. But I think through the conversation, I mean, these are large two-bedroom units. I don't think there'd be much justice done to try and implement a density, calculation by having less units that are larger. I think it's a well use of the second floor. And the parking is my final, bring it home justification, is that they're not asking for a variance in parking. And I think if they can have that quantity of units and it meets the parking, then it's a good use and request of the variance.
All right. With everything being said, and I have nothing else to add that hasn't been said, so I will go ahead and call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? You're all set, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you. Build it. Please build it.
It's already built.
All right, that moves us along to our final item of new business, which is item number D3, case number 170413, public hearing on the appeal of LML Real Estate LLC.
Cameo appearance.
Petitioner and owner for the following variance: waive 8 of the minimum required 18 off-street parking spaces to demolish all existing structures and construct an automobile filling station along with a convenience store and carryout restaurant located at 30875 Woodward Avenue. Mr. Murphy.
At its March meeting, the Planning Commission approved the site plan and granted site plan and special land use approval to the petitioner for the drawings that you see in your packet. As stated, the petitioner is proposing to demolish all structures on site and construct 4 new fuel pumps to be located under a single canopy. They'll also be constructing a new convenience store along the west side of the property that has convenience sales and a carryout restaurant. Based on the square footage, the proposed use requires 18 off-street parking spaces, and the site's able to accommodate 10. So they're seeking a variance of 8 from the required 18 spaces. It should be noted that there is a mezzanine included in this with the approved building. If the mezzanine were eliminated from the proposal, how it might affect the parking variance, it would still need a variance request of, it would be a reduction in the variance request, but it would still need a variance request. They would need 13 parking spaces as opposed to 18.
Any questions for staff? Not seeing any. Are the petitioners present? Please come forward.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Matthew Peters, Jeffrey Scott Architects. Very excited to be here today. I'll begin by stating that, at planning approval, we were granted a very hearty grant on this project. They were very excited about it and what we're doing for the site. Our client, the owner, has already looked at closing off 2 of the curb cuts as well too, to make the site a lot more safe as well too. He's reduced the amount of pumps as well too, to make the site more organized, again, more safe. We're looking at a lot of positives here for this project in all manners. A lot of what you see when it comes to, I think, the parking is the fact that your ordinance is written in such a manner that it is based on usable square footage. And for this particular convenience store, as many are, a lot of that usable square footage is quite a reduction in the amount of square footage that the building has. Most of the customers will come, park, and be there for a short period of time. A lot of the customers may be at the pumps as well too, quickly jump in, quickly jump out. So we're not looking at a lot of time being spent in the convenience store, the gas station, and so there's going to be a lot of turnover in the parking space and at the pumps as well too. A lot of positive things about this project are there, and the building is going to be quite an investment and quite a turnaround from what it is now. And the development of the area is going to be consistent with a lot of what's going on with Beaumont. And we're just very excited about this opportunity, and we're looking forward to your approval for these spaces. We feel the 10 spaces are going to be more than adequate for the amount of business and what is going to take place. The size of the building is very much competitive with what convenience stores are today, and so that is really the focus on, at least when it comes to the square footage. The kitchen area is not a dine-in kitchen area. This is just one of these places that serves a pizza or something real quick where you can grab it and you leave. So we're not looking at having a lot of patrons spend a lot of time in that area as well either. And so when you look at the amount of employees that are really in the building, you're looking at probably maybe a maximum of 4. So the mezzanine is not going to be for any of the customers to go up to. It's really a focus for just a storage of things that goes towards the tenant in that space. And at this time, I'm happy to answer any questions for you that you may have. Yes,
sir.
So you have, you plan on having 4 staff, so if you have proposed parking of 10, that only leaves 6 open.
We like to think, though, that the ones at the pump as well, too, can be considered, because that is pretty standard in convenience store market. And so
I can
forth.
understand that. I just wanted to.
The amount of parking we're proposing, too, is 2.5 times what is existing there as well, too. So right now, he only has 4 spaces. And we've already increased it 2.5 times, so that's quite a benefit.
Yes, ma'am.
How many pumps are there?
Right now, or proposed, there will be only 4.
Only 4. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
so it's quite the cleanup from what is existing there right now.
Will it be both sides, so you have a total of 8?
Yes.
Correct. All right. Yes, ma'am.
Where will you be blocking off the egress and the curb cuts or whatever?
Yes, there you go. That's one that would be blocked off, and that's the other one that would be blocked off. The a little bit more dimpled are the new entrances that we've created that create a much safer and much organized approach into the site. The planning has agreed with that wholeheartedly as well, too.
Can be kind of a crazy corner there with Woodward and Coolidge, correct?
Well, it is a bit crazy right now having 4 curb cuts.
Right.
So it does make it a lot safer having only the 2. And the 2, one of them, of course, is at the farthest distance. The one on Woodward is at the farthest possible distance. So it gives the traffic as much opportunity to, approach it. Yep. And the other one is located center of the maneuvering lane as well, too, the one on Coolidge. So it really does create the best possible opportunity for traffic safety and pedestrian safety as well, too.
Yes, sir.
For confirmation, you don't have an operator for the food side of the business?
I believe the owner does have a prospective tenant right now. Do you have somebody that for the? Yeah. Nothing concrete yet, but it's only in negotiations.
Sorry, the thought that it is carry-out only. You wouldn't have any dining and seating.
No seating at all, no.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Now, did the planning commission go into it all, and you have alluded to it in terms of what you expect the typical length of stay for a visitor to be? Is there any research in that thing, in that line of work, or?
Do you have an idea of maybe average time for customers to be at your store?
Hello, my name is Laith Kassab. I'm the owner. And we're building on the other side of the Woodward between 13 and 14, that big building that's going up. We're putting that gas station together too. I'm sorry, what was your question?
Well, I mean, because you do have a parking deficiency, but one of the things that sort of occurs to me, and I'm just sort of wondering about the plan commission, when you went in front of them, was there any discussion about the typical length of stay and why that parking deficiency may not be as problematic as it could be in a longer stay type situation, say a sit-down restaurant and so forth? Was there any discussion along those lines at all, or?
I mean, I've been in a gas station business for a long time. Usually, right now, they only have like 3-4 car parking, and usually people when they come to the gas station, I mean they're in and out. They'll buy a pack of cigarette, buy a pop, and even with a fast food restaurant, I mean they're going to come in there. We're not going to have no seating there. It's just to grab and go. So.
The lead planner on that day as well, too, she talked about how when she, in fact, goes, she's not there for more than 5 minutes at the most, Even when she does park at the pump, she still goes in, gets her Mountain Dew or something like that, she said, and away she goes, so, yeah.
Any other questions?
I do.
Yes, ma'am.
So how many employees are going to be there? Will they be parking right in the front also?
Yeah, we're going to have 2 employees at 2 employees at the gas station and 2 employees at the restaurant.
That leaves you with 3 spaces plus a handicap space left, or am I, no?
There's 10 total spaces.
All
so,
right, never
yeah.
mind, I didn't look beyond the slash sign. Okay, that's fine.
All right, any other questions? All right, let me ask you gentlemen to take a seat real quickly. I don't think we're going to have much public comment, but is there one remaining audience member? All right, come on down.
Standing between you and wrapping it up, so. Good evening. My name is Lorraine Gerda Branch. I am a property owner at the Brownstones of Royal Oak Condominium Complex. My unit is 3234 Coolidge. So I'm on the west side of the unit, just right by the Beaumont driveway on the end by Coolidge. I've owned that unit since 2005. I've been resident there for the entire time except for 3 years when my ex-husband and I moved to Ferndale. When we got divorced, I'd moved back in. So I've been resident again since this January. My concerns with this property kind of date back to, and apologies for digressing. I'm on the board of directors for the association as well, and I don't speak for the association, but I say that as somebody that's been invested in the community and also very active in the community and maintaining our relationship with the outside area and also within our own community. We've been extraordinarily pro-development, frankly, because it's good for that property, and I think all of us are secretly hoping that someday somebody needs a parking garage and we get to go live someplace else. My concern with this property is basically that in the time that I've lived there, the whole area has become unwalkable, and it's rapidly becoming unlivable and undrivable due to the development. I think the comparison that I would ask the board to consider is with the Starbucks across the street and the issues that has caused with the demand on a space that exceeds what that space can support and what it does to the 2 lanes of Woodward. The Coolidge traffic at peak rush hours tends to back up almost all the way to the Judson Avenue light, which is right by my door. When people get impatient, they start honking their horns. They're not typically really chill in that area. I hear them in the morning, which would not be an issue with this property, but in the evening, definitely we already have a traffic backup. I just feel like it sounds like some of the issues have been addressed, but I think from the perspective of your question on what your business plan is going to support and what kind of turnover you're expecting, is it a grab-and-go property where you would go in and literally grab something that's prepared, or is it more like Mr. Kebab in the Sunoco station where it's a fast carry-out, but they're still looking at a 5 to 8 minute wait? So those are just the questions that as an occupant and a resident there, I would ask to consider when you reduce the number of parking spaces, and then what's that going to do to not only the immediate area, but where pedestrians are trying to cross Coolidge, where people are trying to exit the McDonald's, where people are trying to do whatever they're going to be doing at the new development for Beaumont. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, not seeing anybody else, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing, and yes, sir.
Can anybody bring, I didn't get a chance to see the planning meeting. Has anybody seen it? Does anybody know why planning was excited about this project? I always find it a little disadvantage when we got to go after planning. I mean, it seems like we should go before planning, but I have no idea.
Well, all we're being asked to do is reduce
Did you?
parking spots.
Yeah, I did watch a portion of the video, and I think they voted unanimously to approve it. I think they all thought it was a nice site plan, straightforward, simple, logical. They did like the fact they closed off 2 of those driveways, and they supported it. So it was unanimous.
Unanimous, well.
It went to the Planning Commission first because it required special land use approval. So the ordinance states that before they can seek waivers, the Planning Commission has to grant them the ability by granting them the special land use approval first with a contingency to obtain the waivers thereafter. So that's the theory of why it went in the direction it did.
There's no other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Is there a convenience store there now? Does anybody?
Yeah, there's coolers where you can buy a soda and so forth.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I guess just for conversation, I'm not sure if we're supposed to or not, but I do look at the mezzanine differently. It's being factored into the calculation, but assuming that it is permitted and built and utilized as storage, I don't know if that would really contribute to physical bodies needing to be up there that need to have a vehicle that takes up space somewhere in the property. And kind of my quandary is like the guest, the commented resident is the Mr. Kebab scenario, right? And if this is a very well-known place that people go to go get a kebab and not get any gasoline, and so it's, you know, if we bless this without knowing who the operator is, you know, are we potentially creating a scenario of a traffic snarl at an already very, very busy intersection? At the same time, second side of that just conversation is, you know, if they had a very successful place, I don't think I would want to penalize the business for having a good business. So I am interested in the rest of the board's opinion on the parking and how that kitchen prep area and the food service could be utilized.
We had a case come in front of the Planning Commission 3 or 4 years ago for the total station located over at 14 and Crooks. And a lot of the neighbors came out in very staunch opposition to it, stating a lot of the same traffic concerns that you see at 13 or Woodward and Coolidge, but Woodward and Coolidge is clearly far worse. And, you know, one of the conversations that we were having is that a lot of the way that these gas stations were designed, you know, back in the 60s and 70s just does not work today. And so by doing nothing, you get to continue with the problems that you already have. By doing something, then you get to address the ingress and egress. You get to address better pump locations and better flow on the site itself, which lends itself to correcting a lot of the problems that you're currently facing. Yes, sir.
Oh, so although we can't count the pumps, we can count the pumps, because it's just a fact that when I pull up to get gas, I fill up, I run in to get my drink, or whatever it may be. So it's just a natural fact that those are parking spaces, I think.
Anthony, you had a comment?
I
believe you were
agree.
first before me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was going to say the same thing that Mr. Klatt said, is in this situation, I don't think that we should strictly adhere to the requirements because people do leave their cars and run in and get stuff. So basically, they're almost complying.
I have a question for Joseph, having to do with that Starbucks, which I wasn't on the board then, but I don't think they needed any variances for that, did they? And
Their original proposal did, and then the board denied the variances, so they made the square footage smaller to comply with the amount of parking.
So
to the best of my understanding, the largest concern that people have is the flow of traffic, being able to handle the number of stacking spaces. They actually have an excess amount of stacking spaces per our ordinance. Our ordinance is pretty stringent at the number. You look at other communities, and we are far more stringent. So it's just, we can't control the popularity of one business versus another. Bob's making me hungry.
Yes, sir.
Just because it seems like all the discussions done this way, I'll propose to grant the variance as requested.
We have a motion on the table.
I'll support.
Supported. Any additional discussion on your motion, sir?
Yeah, this is some of the problems that lend itself to is its own unique situation. Unlike a normal convenience store where you don't have a walk-in beer cooler or a regular cooler, you usually have to stack all those stuff from the front. Or if you're definitely don't get a chance to go and walk in and grab this stuff. I agree what's been said about the mezzanine where it's all storage, so I really don't consider that with the parking. And if this is a successful business, well, people will not bother on waiting. They'll see that it's filled up and they'll just go. They won't even go to it. So I don't, the parking, if there's a problem, it's not going to lend itself to people parking on the street because you can't park anywhere in Coolidge or Woodward. For the walkability, I actually think the site plan's making it safer by bringing it down to only 2 entrances, exits, and getting them in more better locations. So because of all of this, I think with the grab and go, I'm not going to have as much problem. I have a little bit concerned, but I figure the business itself will work itself out.
One thing that happens also when you go to just the two entrances and further away from the corner, it will actually make the flow from Coolidge onto Woodward smoother and quicker than it is today. Because when you get those situations where within 3 feet of the corner you can turn into something, people hit their brakes, stop everybody behind them. By the time you get to that other driveway, somebody coming behind you could change lanes on Woodward and go around you. You can't do that. So it may actually alleviate some of the traffic problems to change, and where those driveways are, not only getting rid of two, but also moving them further from the corners in both cases.
Anybody else?
I have another question for Joseph. Just if this, right now, they don't have any tables that they're designating, the little sit-down, right, correct? So is there anything that keeps them from, let's say, if they get so busy, they start putting tables up in the mezzanine? Or would they have to come back to us for that?
They would, at that point, we would consider that floor space a standard restaurant.
Just wanted to make sure if we need to be adjusted like that.
It would also fall into different building code requirements as well.
All right. Thank you.
All right, not seeing any other hands. And we'll go ahead and call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you, gentlemen. All right, is there any other business for the good of the body? And seeing nobody in the audience, we will have no public comment. We are looking for the mystery motion.
I will make one announcement.
Yes, sir.
There are no items for next month. Next month is canceled. You can enjoy the May flowers that they talk of after all this rain.
Oh.
Yeah.
When was the last time this
You can
happened?
show up if you want. You look like you really want to
No,
come.
I can't remember.
It's probably been last January. To be
Is there
my
a
recollection.
requirement that it comes in 30 days in advance?
Oh, yeah, and that date's long since passed. If I would have gotten something today, I would have taken it, but I really haven't gotten anybody to make application. I had a couple people talk, and I just tell them I don't have anything. If you don't get me it now, I'm not going to have a meeting, and I already have the intention of canceling it, so it's officially canceled.
There was no meeting on Tuesday either, which was kind of odd.
There'll be one next month.
What does it look like for June and beyond?
Just one so far for June. We'll stack them up for June for you. We'll make up for it.
Thanks, Joseph.
All right.
I have a whole night off now. What am I going to do with myself?
I would like to share that tonight will be my last meeting participating in the zoning board. So my wife and I have bought a new home, and unfortunately, after 17 years of living in the city of Royal Oak, we are no longer going to be residents, so I'm ineligible to continue working in this capacity.
That's a bummer, Tom.
Where you moving to?
Congratulations on the new home.
Not far, Beverly Hills, half mile from Royal Oak. But I've really enjoyed this experience, and I appreciate every one of you and the time you've given and the discourse. It's only my 4th year. I'm not a veteran who's here 20 years ago and back and forth, but I think the chemistry on this board is fantastic. This is by far the best group that in my experience I've had, and I'll miss it. So.
Well, they probably need you over there in Beverly Hills. That's what I did. I went to Berkeley, Royal Oak.
Well, Tim, as it's your last meeting, how about you offer us the mystery motion?
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Now that we've adjourned, though, nothing to do with...